Good evening. Welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring women-owned businesses from across the country. And now, for your host, Kimberly McLemore.
All right, good evening and welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses from across the country. I am your host, Kimberly McLemore, and welcome to another night of sharing. With us, we have Mariko Frederick, CEO of Soul Priority. Imagine dying and then coming back, and your gift was to be able to see and hear people's destiny. Mariko Frederick did just that, and her journey and dedication is to help entrepreneurs leverage the gift that is already in them. She uncovers what your true calling is in the world and sees the assignment on your life as well as your path to abundance. She worked with Olympic and professional athletes, CEOs of 7- and 8-figure businesses, and serves as a transformational speaker, spiritual healer, and high-performance coach. Her book about life in the afterlife is scheduled to be released later this year. So, without further ado, please help me welcome to my platform, Mariko Frederick. Hey, Mariko, how are you?
Hi, I'm well. Thanks for having me on today.
Oh, I'm excited. Most people don't know, but we've been sitting around talking for like the last 10 minutes or so, and I almost forgot it was time to start the show.
we had too much fun already. We actually had to rein it in and say, wait. So we got to say something for the show.
Right, exactly. So I am extremely excited about this conversation we're going to have tonight. But before we dive into everything, Mariko, could you please just talk to the listeners and tell them just a little bit more about who Mariko is beyond your business?
Yeah, sure. So Mariko, I'm half Japanese, so that's where the name comes from, Mariko Frederick. Mm-hmm. And I was not planning on, I was going to say I wasn't planning on dying. That doesn't sound right, but I was. So my life path took a really big detour when I had a near-death experience. You know, I was happy as a clam. I was a rock climber. I was an avid backpacker. And I had a practice in alternative medicine, alternative healing. And if my life stayed on track that way for the rest of my life, I would have been happy. Mm-hmm. And so what really changed was 16 years ago, I had a near-death experience, and literally my life has become unrecognizable from that experience on. So it gave such incredible perspective on what we're really here to do. Mm-hmm. But it also, you know, it's kind of funny, like part of me is like, yeah, and it messed up my plans.
Right. It's like, wait a minute now. This was not what I said I wanted to do, right?
Thank you. Right. This is not what I wanted to do. I wasn't expecting this. I was so happy. And then, you know, it wasn't easy. Like, you know, when I came back with an assignment on my life, I didn't come back with a website and a marketing plan. I came back sick. I came back in bed for years. Wow. And it really felt like I spent I say 10 years, but it was really over 10 years really chasing after the person I knew I was meant to be. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't, it just took so long to get there because of my health and the challenges and just the confusion of, but what do I do? Right? Mm-hmm. So that was, in a nutshell, that's kind of what led me to talking to you today. Was I had to figure out during those 10 years, you know, the assignment on my life. What is it? What am I doing? What are my gifts now that I've come back? Mm-hmm. And it, you know, the way people have asked me a lot about the experience, and one of the things I can say is that, you know, I felt like I got downloaded with some information, but it wasn't like I came back and was like, oh, cool. Okay, this is what I'm here to teach. This is what I'm here to do. This is great. Mm-hmm. No, I had to live through it for a decade. I had to live through the lessons that I would eventually be able to teach and speak on. And so I really spent 10 years very, very ill.
Wow. And that's incredible. And I guess I'm going to backtrack a little bit here, because the story itself is just, I'm sitting here kind of overwhelmed listening to what you're saying. But before all of this had happened, you know, like you said, prior to that, you know, you had a business, your life was considered normal, you were really happy. And so you were already in business. So the business that you were doing prior, what had inspired you to do the business that you were doing, and what was that business?
So it was alternative healing. I am board certified, even to this day, I'm board certified with the National Certification Commission for Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine.
Okay.
In a field, a branch of Chinese medicine called Asian Bodywork Therapy, which is the non-invasive and energy healing bodywork version or branch of traditional Chinese medicine. And so I was practicing that and had been for, I think, 6 years before I got sick. And what led to that, I mean, if you want to know that story, was I was working in a hospital. Before I got into the alternative field, I actually spent time working at UCLA Medical Center in the neurosurgery trauma intensive care unit. Wow. And after that, I was working in another little hospital, not that one, but a different one in California. And I hurt my back lifting a patient. And, they put me on workman's comp and said, you either have to do acupuncture or chiropractic. And so I was a little afraid of chiropractic at the time, so I said acupuncture. And granted, this is like 1997 or something, so it was not, people didn't know what acupuncture was back then.
Right.
And I go in for my first session, and he's like, this guy tells me, and granted, I'm all Western medicine at this point, like anything alternative was just out there. And so I go in for my first session, and he puts me on his massage table, and he checks me out. He looks at my tongue. He takes my pulses. I'm like, what are you doing? And he said, your back is fine. You actually have an ovarian cyst that's pushing up against your uterus, that's doing this, and that's causing the sciatica. And I'm like,
wow.
God, you're crazy.
Right.
So I thought he was crazy. And then 5 months later, I was getting wheeled into the operating room in the middle of the night with a rupturing ovarian cyst that was, I can't remember how big it was, but it was big. And it was pushing up against, was it pushing up against my uterus, and it was everything was kind of inflamed in there. Anyways, I had that taken care of. I had surgery, and guess what? The next day, the pain was gone. Back pain.
Man,
the sciatica. And so he was right.
Years. Wow.
So he was right.
He was right, and you were completely wrong.
He was
sure.
right. Well, here's the other thing. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, wait. In my defense, the other thing, he looked in my ear. Like, he didn't look in my ear. It was like, like a doctor does. He looked at my ear, looked at my tongue, and then told me this was happening. And I'm like, how do you know that? He's like, because I looked, literally to this day, he'll say it, because I looked in your ear. Please tell me how that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. It's like none of it makes sense. So I could see why you would say, no, you got to be Lulu yourself. Okay. I didn't come here to hear this. I come here for you to take those needles and put them in my back. Right.
Fix my back so I can get back to work and back to climbing. And none of that happened. I ended up apprenticing with him before I went to school, and he taught me a lot. So so that's how I first started. In the alternative healing realm. Yeah.
Right. And then part of alternative healing, there's still to this day, a lot of people don't truly believe in it, as much or utilize it. I don't believe in the way that they could or should. And I think a big part of this is because it's not as marketed as much, even though we're still saying, people are coming to it. But what is your thought process on that? And why do you feel that people may have some fear of wanting to do the alternative medicine and other practice and more holistic healing versus doing it the way we do it now with, you go to the doctor, here's a bunch of pills. This will make you feel good for 5 minutes. But then, you're going back and you're doing it again. Yeah,
I think, it's getting better. 20 years ago, and beyond 20 years ago, it was very difficult. People not only did they not believe in you, they thought, I had people come and say, I can't see you because I'm Christian.
Wow.
There was a church in the town I lived in preaching that Chinese medicine was the work of the devil. So we have come a long way from 20-some years ago. But, I think the thing is it's not an either or, it's both. Right. Okay. So you have to have your own discernment and say, okay, what am I dealing with? And am I taking care of myself? Right. Are you taking care of yourself? And if you're doing everything you really know you're supposed to do, you are exercising, you're active, right? It doesn't have to be at the gym, but you're active, and you are eating right. You're not eating processed foods all the time. You're not eating junk foods all the time. You're not eating sugar all the time. Now, if you're doing pretty good and you still can't find, something's wrong, and you've done everything you can, then it's really about discernment to say, okay, which route should I go, right? Obviously, if you break your leg, you're going to the doctor, right? But if you've had something chronic, I always love it when people get checked out first just to make sure there's nothing major,
Right.
And then if they can't find anything, then I think alternative medicine is a beautiful place to land, because that could be the final cure. That said, it's not a magic pill. You do have to take accountability for your own health.
Okay. And that's important to hear, because I think that when people hear the word alternative, they're not really always thinking in that perspective. They are thinking, well, this has got to be better. This is magic. You know, they take the wand and boom, you're perfectly back to normal. And so I think that's important that you bring that up. And so, you know, you talked about the journey that you had with this doctor, with your back, all these little things were happening to you. And then, of course, you get all fixed up. And then you have this bigger journey that you went through. So for 10 years, I'm trying to understand and grasp what happened to you in those 10 years and how did you cope with all of it? I mean, you like I said, you literally had to rethink your whole life, and it was like torture for 10 years. Talk about that.
It was, you know, I really felt like I had to climb out of the ashes of my old life and reinvent myself. And it wasn't easy, because it's not something that people understand. You know, this was before Facebook and Instagram took off. You couldn't find groups. You couldn't find people that were relating to, you know, a 29, 30-year-old woman who lost all of her health. And I didn't have cancer. I didn't have something that was relatable, that people were like, oh yeah, I know what that is, right? I had a mystery disease. Nobody knew what was wrong with me. I had a couple things going on. One, I was injured, and that was what caused the near-death experience. But at the same time, or in the same month, I had gone hiking, and I got bit by a tick, and I contracted Lyme disease, and I didn't know it. Even though I had the bullseye rash, even though a doctor had my arm, he was holding my arm looking at the bullseye rash. He didn't identify it. He didn't know what it was. So it took 3.5 years to get diagnosed and treated, and by that time, the illness, the infection, the Lyme disease had gone into my brain.
Wow.
And I was confused. And so, you know, talk about losing my identity. I went from, you know, 125-pound rock climber, a person who thought that a 20-mile hike was a general normal day hike, you know, knock that out in a day, no problem, to being 200 pounds, barely able to crawl to my bathroom. And this happened in a matter of just a couple of years, right? And so I lost my identity. There's nothing to prepare you to losing the person that everything you knew yourself to be. And it wasn't like I had the next thing, right? I didn't know the Mariko of today. I didn't have that promise. I didn't know, like, oh, but you know what? Don't worry, Mariko, in 16 years, you know, from now, you're going to be running Soul Priority. You're going to have, you know, you're going to be focused on personal development. Like, nobody's telling you that. You just have to live through it day by day. And, you know, really what got me through was, I would say, you know, in all honesty, the number one thing that got me through was my spiritual experience, my spiritual belief, my faith in God. Because when you die, you do see a whole different, you see the ultimate reality in a way. You see what we really are. That got me through. I think the other thing that got me through was a little bit of a sense of humor. And so when I would get really sick, like the first time that, you know, my husband came home and he found me sitting on the couch, after work in my pajamas in the dark. You know, I had gotten so confused at that point that I didn't know how to change my clothes. I didn't know how to turn on the light switch. I didn't know how to make a phone call. I remember picking up my phone and turning it over and over in my hand and thinking like, I got to call somebody, and I didn't know how to use the phone. And then I went to my front door and I thought, okay, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to wave down like a neighbor. And I could not open the door. I didn't know how. And so, you know, my husband came home. He found me in this state. And of course, he's like, you know, we had an appointment with a doctor the next morning, and he asked me, you know, if I needed to go to the hospital. And I had unfortunately, very unfortunately, I had not had a good experience with doctors up until I found the one that did diagnose and treat me. A lot of them had told me straight to my face, you're making this up. It's all in your head. And that's really hard when you're dying on the inside and someone's like, this is in your head. You're making it up. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And so my answer when he said, you know, do you want to go to the hospital? I was like, no, you know, it's not like I'm going to die. They wouldn't let me.
And they're probably looking at you like, wait a minute now.
I was like, I mean, you know, where am I going?
Oh my goodness.
And so there has to, because so much of it was so heartbreaking and just, I would say soul shattering, but really it's ego shattering. It's everything you think you know that you are just gets shattered. But really, I would say my faith in God, my faith in the divine plan, and a sense of humor. You got to laugh about it. You can't take it so seriously. Like, all right, well, you sent me back. You didn't, because I didn't want to come back. I didn't want to come back. Like, I love life, but once you go there, you're like, why would I go back? And then, they didn't even play fair, girl. Okay, so here's the thing. They didn't even play fair. I felt people ask me how long I was there. Well, first of all, it's timeless. There's no time, right? You go into the infinite. But what I can say is it felt, if I had to break it down, I would say it felt like I was there for 800 years.
Really?
And so, yeah.
So let me, I got to ask you this. I got to add, I hate to interrupt, but I got to add, okay, now, because this is always what people, I'm sure you've heard this a million times. So did you see the light? It's always this thing about, okay, so it's not, it is a true thing. It is, okay. And because I'm like,
it's a thing, yeah.
Okay.
It's a thing. And, it's interesting because I have never, and this happened 16 years ago, I have never, not once, ever read anybody else's account of their death experience. I've never read another. People sent me, at the time they emailed me different links and different stories and told me about different books, and I never looked at one. What I can tell you is, when I felt like I was pushing a weight up and down on my chest, and breathing was so hard. And when I was just pushing this weight up and letting it fall, pushing this weight up, letting it fall. And finally, I just let it fall. And when I did, interesting, it got quiet, but I still heard my heartbeat. And then eventually, so first there's just sound, right? The light didn't come on like immediately, although it was probably in a very just seconds, it felt like to me. But first there was the breathing stopped, and then my heartbeat stopped. And then, interesting, and I have no idea what anybody else's experience is because I've never looked into it, but there's this buzzing sound that shut off, and I'm realizing that was my nervous system. And so when my nervous system shut down, it got so quiet. Then the light came on. Then you just feel like there's 1,000 lights shining, like 1,000 suns shining right at you, but it's not too bright. It's perfect. And from there, you go into the death experience of going through the light, saying goodbye to all your friends and family. Not goodbye, because I was again, okay, so my personality just kind of carries through. So
you're like, wait a minute.
I feel bad sometimes because it's like there's this whole spiritual experience, and sometimes I'm like, okay, but my personality was still there. So when I stopped breathing, I was in a lot of pain and I was struggling. And when I finally stopped breathing, I was like, oh, that's better. Breathing is so overrated. And that was what I thought. And I know I'm supposed to give you some very spiritual input I had, but I didn't. I was like, oh, breathing is overrated. Like, woof, I'm alive, right?
Goodness.
I felt good. And so as I'm going through each family member and dear friend, it wasn't a goodbye. It was just this pure gratitude, just immense, explosive gratitude for each person.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I went into more of the death experience with a life review and getting the assignment and the download on my life. But really, it did. It felt like the whole thing, took, by the time they told me I had to go back and help people, that it wasn't my time, first of all, I said no.
Well, I'm sitting here listening you talk about that, breathing, we all take it for granted because it's something we're just used to doing. But when you say that it was like a release, it relieved you from the pressure. It was almost like it relieved you from the pressure of the world that we live in. And to think about what you're saying here, I know we're joking and kind of laughing about it and everything, but the connection that you had at that point of, like you said, you've gone through all your family members and friends and people that you're so dear to and close to, but you didn't want to leave. What do you remember, and if you don't mind sharing, that was said to you of why they wanted you to come back? Why did God say, no, we're not ready for you. You have things you have to do. I need you to go back. And you were fighting that because you wanted to stay.
I was. Of course I did. I was home. I was alive. I had never been more alive. Why would I go anywhere? Plus, honestly, my first thought was no, but then it was almost like, go be who? Mariko who? I mean, I could barely remember the person I was, and now you want me to go leave this place that I'm home, I'm soaring in infinite bliss consciousness with God, and you want me to go be somebody named Mariko? I could barely remember who that was, like an inkling of it. But I had left that, and so, but what happened was, in the end of what I would consider feeling like I was soaring in infinite bliss consciousness for 800 years, being joy, being bliss, realizing my true nature is peace, love, joy, bliss, and just soaring in that, I heard them say, and actually at the time I was thinking, I'm alive, I am love, I am joy. And then I heard a voice say, it's not your time. You have to go back. And it was like, huh?
Wow.
It was a little devastating, like, wait, what? And they said, and so my first thought was no. And they said, you have to go back and help people. It's not your time. You have to go back and help them. Remember who you are. Go back and help them. Remember who you are. And of course, I said no again. And then they told me that each soul has a designated time that they can leave. And you can't leave before your time or after your time. And this isn't your time. You have to go back and help them. You have to go back. You have to remember who you are and go back and help people. And at that point, I agreed. And, I think I thought, like, I don't know, like it was going to be opening a door and I would just be like, okay, I'll go back in. But
right.
I remember trying, which is funny because how does one even know how to try? But there was this sort of effort on my behalf to go back, and I couldn't. And so I remember saying, I can't get back. And then in that moment, there's no time, so everything feels like it's happening instantly. So the moment I had the thought of, I can't, I felt like I was being pushed from behind and just like flown through the universe. And then I was back in my body.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, I felt like I had been hit by a train.
Yeah, I was going to say that, thinking that you're gone and you're going to live in bliss, you're where you want to be. And then you're coming back, you're pushed back into this reality that you have to live with. And then your reality turns into 10 years of basically hell of trying to recoup who you thought you were into who you needed to be. So with this experience that you have had and you've dealt with during that time, then next thing you know, your life, you got better, obviously. And then here you are with this amazing business and you're teaching people how to look into their higher self and know what their higher purpose is in life. Now, how did you transform all that? Because, I'm sure people are sitting here right now listening like, this story is a bunch of craziness right now. It's like, why is this lady on here? Okay, and as you and I talked earlier, my thing is always about people really understanding who we are. It's not always just about the business, it's about the individual. So we've grasped some of that. And I'm trying to understand now how you've worked all of this in your true calling and your assignment on helping others. How does this work with other people?
So everybody has an assignment on their life, right? You're here to do something. And I think the big thing that we do, oftentimes we miss it. Or we play to, like, if we were to leave this world and they showed you the level that you're playing at, some people might be playing 50% of their potential or 30% of their potential. And so really what I help people do is live full out. I help them live 100% of what they're meant to do. And get really specific on what the assignment is on their life. And so that's what my calling is to help other people live in their purpose, because here's the key. When you live in your purpose, all of the resources you need are at your disposal, including money. And so I think what happens, and this is specifically for your listeners and the business people listening, so when you leave this world, you see that everything that you needed was at your disposal. Meaning if you needed, abundance is at your disposal, let's put it that way. Inside abundance, you can have poetry, you can have art, you can have health, you can have relationships, love. And then what we do is we say, okay, that's abundance. And then we put money in the little cage. And we say, well, that's hard to get. But money is the same. It's in the same bubble of abundance. It's not we don't worry that somebody else is listening to the same song at the same time we are. We don't worry that we're going to run out of poetry. We're not worried that we're going to run out of art, but we worry that we're going to run out of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so money is part of our abundant right. And so when you're living the assignment on your life, when you're really playing full out, abundance, the law of attraction, it works and it will come to you. But you really need to be in integrity with who you are as the soul and what you're here to do and who you're here to help, right? You have to come from that point of serving. How can I make this world better? How can I make lives better? And then you start to watch how that works. And you also have to realize, do not put your money in a cage and lock it and tell yourself it's hard to get.
Right.
And I think a lot of times with business people, we think it's a struggle.
Yeah. And I was going to say that's normally the mindset of most individuals, whether it's business or personal, is that they're so locked into, well, how am I going to make money? I can't. And then then it goes from, how am I going to make it to, I can't do this, I can't do that, I don't have this, I don't have that. So it becomes all negative and there's no positive there. So how do you teach people to really, truly unlock their mindset? To understand that, yes, this is your purpose, but then even if you figure out what your purpose is, there are some people who know what their purpose is, but there's that fear of jumping into it and doing what they need to do is usually right there in front of their face. And I can say that for myself. We all go through that process. So how do you get them to get that mindset right?
That's a lot of so I do work with mindset. I do work with healing. So there is a lot of that as well that when I'm working with one-on-one clients, and really showing them who they are, allowing them to feel that big version of themselves so they can step into that person and just be that person and play play their role, so to speak, or be the person they're meant to be full out. And it's a shift. It sometimes it happens really quickly and sometimes it happens over time. It's not a one and done for everybody. It's not like I could say I do this one thing all the time, every time, right? Sometimes I use visualizations. Really what it is just my gift I came back with is the ability to see what you're meant to do before you leave this world and where the abundance is. And when I share that with people, with my one-on-one clients especially, it resonates so deep in their soul that when I say it, it's every time. It's something that they have never spoken out loud. And it's one of those, how did you know? Or most often it's they have a feeling inside. They feel it, but they don't have words for it. But they know it. They feel it. It's just there all the time. They know they're meant for more, but they don't know what. And then the gift I have is to be able to say, this is exactly what it is. Here's step 1 through 10. Go do that. Right? And then so that's the how, I guess you could say, is really using that gift I have been blessed with and come back with to say, this is what you're meant to do. This is how you're going to do it, and get really specific about what that is. And so that's how I work with people.
Wow. I mean, and it sounds so simple, but yet still, obviously, it's a struggle for people just to, like I said, get up every day and determine what their purpose is in life, and then go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, so there's twofold, so it should never be a struggle because honestly, like what you're here to do, the people you're here to help, okay, go do that to your best of your ability. But really what we're here for, if there's number one purpose for everybody, it's so simple. Kimberly, it's really God consciousness, union with God, right? Enlightenment, loving God, serving God, right? Devotion to that divine is all of our purpose. There's nothing greater that you could do than that. If you spent your whole life just loving and serving God, loving and serving the divine, whatever you call it, right? Divine Mother, God, Allah, whatever you call that. If you literally spent every breath between your first and your last serving and being close to God, you've done it. You've gotten an A, right? But what I've noticed is people don't want enlightenment just because we tell them that they should. They don't pray and meditate and serve God because they know it's good for them. But when it gets aligned with their work, then they're interested. They're like, oh, okay, so if I serve these people over here and I do this, then I'm in alignment with my soul, my purpose. I'm in alignment with serving God. And then they really love it. And then it becomes really interesting for them. And it's more fun because you don't want your daily job necessarily to be separate from your spiritual path. Right. We like it when it's in alignment.
Right. It shouldn't. Yeah. Because
it shouldn't.
Right. And I think a big part of that is what you just said is understanding what alignment is. But what I love what you said more, and I think that consciously people think this but don't do it, is like you said, serving God and understanding that he is who he is, and the reason why you wake up every day is because of him. So it's like when you understand how God works so much better when he's in your life versus when he's outside of your life, and you only want to bring him in when it's convenient for you, that's usually where the problem comes in. And I can speak truth to that. You know, it's like we all feel like we go through this portion in our lives where we think we know better. You know, I can do this. I don't need to hear this, or I don't need to do that. And then it hits you, you know, if you're actually listening. And even with all the things that are going on around us today, and we've been talking about the pandemic now for months. And the thing that I constantly notice in my mind is that we have been brought to our knees, but it's how are you handling being brought to your knees? What are you actually doing to understand why we've been brought to our knees? It's not just about coming out here and talking and you know, saying the things you want to say, but what is it subconsciously happening to you personally to make you understand what is going on around us? And I guess I would like to hear your perspective of that as well. What your feelings and thought process of how things are today and why we have been brought to our knees.
I love, first of all, how you just explained that. I was just enjoying that. So much truth just pouring out of you. I was like, you know, I think so much of it is, I mean, there's so many levels, but honestly, here, I think a lot of it is a growing up of the world, of accountability, right? And so this is not something that's going to be popular, but as a human species, like we know about the law of attraction, right? We know that when we think good things come to us. We know this. And yet, most of the time, right, with the however many thoughts a day we have, 80,000 thoughts per day or something, most of those thoughts are negative. And somehow, out of those negative thoughts, out of complaining, out of posting mean things to each other on Instagram, out of, you know, because there is that like whole passive-aggressive meanness that's going on Instagram.
Right.
We somehow expect happy, good responses from the universe. That somehow, when you spend most of your day having negative thoughts, and a lot of these thoughts are unconscious, right? They're in your subconscious thoughts. But most of your thoughts being negative, and then the whole world is kind of basically like complaining and bullying each other and hating on each other, and we wonder why we're in this state. And it takes a level of emotional and spiritual maturity to say, I will not be a part of this. I am going to step aside from all of the chaos and all of the anger and all of the bullying. You know, do your thing, vote, be responsible, but to get wrapped up into it all day, every day, these conversations, and somehow expect the universe to send you blessings and growth and wisdom when you've spent most of the time attracting the opposite. I think that a lot of what's happening is a opportunity for emotional and spiritual maturity. And that's so much of what the path to enlightenment is, right? Emotional and spiritual maturity is necessary. It's not just acting like a grown-up at work. It truly is bringing in that level of higher consciousness throughout your day and saying, okay, I see these people bickering over there. I see them complaining about whatever horrible thing is going on in the world. Do you want to participate and dive in, or do you want to elevate your consciousness above that and help elevate the world? And it's a choice. Each person is making that choice every moment of every day. Every moment of it. So nothing, this is another good one from when I died. There's not a moment of your life that's missed, right? God sees everything, every thought, every word, every deed. Nothing goes unnoticed. So when I see deep. A lot of people.
So
people are
deep.
Complaining. There's not like you. I mean, I don't. You know, whatever religion you are, I'm not here to push my belief on anybody, my spiritual beliefs on anybody. But whatever you pray to, it's not about us being the judge and jury for everybody.
Amen.
That's the universe did not make a cosmic mistake. The universe, God, does not make mistakes, and so all of the chaos we're seeing here, right? It's not that God was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I totally messed up and that person died and what was I thinking? No. Every single life, every single thing happening and unfolding is happening in divine right timing and on purpose. And so it's what can we learn from it? How can we grow from it, right? Instead of just getting angry, how can we rise above it and make this world a better place? Because there's a lot of work to be done here. And here's the other thing, obviously, not everyone in this world has the same level of consciousness.
Right.
Right? So there's some people with very elevated consciousness, and there's some people that don't. And that's okay. Again, they are not a mistake. They're not a mistake. They're on their journey too. Now, I'm not going to go hang out with them and have dinner with them, right? We don't necessarily do that, but we don't have to hate and judge and point fingers. It's like, okay, you know, if this earth was a school, some people are getting their PhD, and some people are just entering grammar school or kindergarten. And so it's up to those people that are elevated and are working on getting their master's or PhD, so to speak, in soul consciousness, to not get dragged into the conversation of people who are just sitting in perpetual anger and blame and hate. Yep. And so, but it's happening. It's happening. I see people
every
last
day.
year were doing all these inspirational posts, right? We know them. We know who they are. All these inspirational posts, and all of a sudden 2020 hits, and it's just like, who are you?
Right.
I mean, it's from positive to negative in like 2 seconds. And it's like, hey, remember who you are. Stop that. Don't do that. It's not worth it. It is not worth it. Spending any amount of time getting distracted from your divine purpose is not worth it.
Right. And at the end of the day, you know, the whole conversation is about humanity. People just want to be treated like human beings. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
And to have and as I'm saying, just to have, you know, people tell you or point at you and say, well, no, you're not worthy because you don't look a certain way, you don't talk a certain way, you don't act a certain way. It drives me over the edge some days, because you get so tired of feeling like you have to live on the edge, you know, because people are consciously and subconsciously always telling you, even in your face, that you don't belong. And it's like, how dare you tell me I don't belong? And, you know, so you're constantly battling these things, and then you're trying to stay above water, so to speak, you know, trying to stay positive and live your life in a way. And, you know, one thing I can say is all the wrongs and all the things I've seen in this world and in my life for 54 years, you know, one thing I've never been taught is to hate. No matter what has ever happened to me, no matter whatever's ever gone on around us, I've never, ever been taught to hate. And it just amazes me how sometimes from the time a child has been brought into this world, that has been the number one thing that the person is raising them, is teaching them hate. And why? Yeah. You know, what is it that who gives you that authority to say they don't belong and you do? And this is why we're going to hate them. You know, so it's just so much of that, like you said, going on right now.
It is, and it's believe me, I have to pull myself back too, because I get pretty angry. But I have to remember, none of this is happening by accident, and nothing goes unseen. And so there are people doing some very bad stuff out there right now, and I call it the long game. Like, I could either get wrapped up in it and get so angry at some post I saw on social media, or I could know that God saw all of it. And if you whatever's coming to you is coming to you. So if you are a truly bad person and a truly hateful person, sometimes we see the judgment play out in this world, right? We see the judgments coming. We see them go to prison. We see them get in trouble. Other times we don't see it. It doesn't mean it's not happening. It's just happening between that soul and God. And God is teaching that soul directly, and I guarantee you it's not fun.
Yeah, so and that makes sense.
There's people, when you leave this world, there's a higher realms and there's a lower realms. Not everybody goes to the higher realms. Not everybody goes to that heavenly place. And I think right now there's a lot of different people in this planet, and it is about coming together, people, you know, and supporting each other and loving on each other and saying, you know, you do count. You are the infinite soul. When we leave this world, we're not black, white, green, Asian, whatever, gay, straight. You're none of that. None of that. And yet it happens. It happened to my grandparents, my aunts and uncles. They were put in Japanese internment camps during World War II because they were Japanese, stripped of their constitutional rights. People want that to happen again today. There's always going to be people of a lower consciousness here who want to run the world with hate because it's their comfort zone. And then people like you are like, I don't get it, because you don't have a hateful bone in your body. So thank God you don't understand them. Thank God. You don't understand them. But it does. It burns us up. But it can't. So that's the thing. It burns us up. So like take action into creating more positivity, but don't let them drag us down. Right? Because look at you. You've got thousands of listeners. You've got your own show. You're like, I was never taught to hate. And now you're spending your life, creating your own world where you're bringing these messages out to the world and bringing people together and facilitating this deeper healing that needs to happen through our story, through our voices. So because you didn't get wrapped up, God's like, okay, I'm going to use you. You've got some stuff to do. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, he's been putting me to work for quite some time. I'm like, all right, now, what are you trying to do here? Oh, wow.
I know.
Wow. It's deep, deep, deep. But I love what you said earlier. I can't get it out of the back of my head about God sees everything. When we think that he is not seeing or hearing us, we have to constantly remind us that, you think you're getting away with this over here. You're not, and there's so many good people in this world, and so many people are using those good people. And they constantly are pouring themselves out to people because they do believe in, doing the Lord's work, the serving part. And, but at the same time, it does get to people. And so you're trying to hold on to that. And you're trying to grasp to all these things. Like I said, the things that are going on outside of your world, the things that are going on within your world and your personal self. It can be very difficult to wrap it all up. And then when you're talking about professionally into transforming themselves into their businesses or whatever it is they're trying to do, you're teaching people how to align with everything. And to me, it just seems like so much more work. And that's part of the reason why people don't do, their purpose or their alignment because of the fear. And I may be wrong, but I'm just always try to grasp and understand, I guess, for myself personally too, that when you're trying to do these things and you have it, like you said, it's something that's running through your mind consistently saying, this is what you're supposed to be doing. But then you're trying to figure out, where is that end result? How do you get people to understand those end results too? Don't always, like you say, come right away, but where do you keep them holding their faith?
I get really specific. For one thing, I get very specific with my one-on-one clients, so I'm not vague. I literally see, like, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this, and then my clients go do it, and then they I can say in 2019 specifically, all my clients made more money. I said, go do this, go do that, and they all went and made more money. So I'm happy. I don't know, I can't guarantee that, but I am very specific on what I see for them, and it tends to work out. But in general, the how isn't so much of a how, it's a surrendering to the divine plan. Sometimes we're forcing, right? And forcing is not getting there. Forcing is stalling us, really. And so it's aligning and saying, okay, I'm going to allow myself to be a vessel of God's love and God's work. Now take a look. What are my gifts and talents? What's the most obvious thing? So the way that I describe, like, finding your purpose is when you're like leaving and you have a meeting and you're super busy and you're running late and you've got your meeting and you cannot find your keys and you're running around the house and you're starting to get really frustrated because you don't want to be late for this meeting and you cannot find your keys, and then they're in my hand the whole time. Right. That's basically every single time without fail when I tune in, and that's what I call it, tuning in, and see the purpose, the assignment on someone's life. That's exactly what it is. I'm like, it's this. But they never had words for it. And so once I put the words to it, it's like, oh, or sometimes they did have the words, but they almost needed somebody else to see it for them as well. They needed that recognition. They needed that reinforcement. But even after that, it is about walking in alignment with your soul, with God, and saying, you are driving. You're steering this thing. I'm going to just keep moving forward. And because at the end of our lives, here's the thing. When I died, God wasn't like, all right, Mariko, how much money did you make? How well did you do? How successful was your business? How many followers did you have on Instagram? I mean, well, there was no Instagram. God doesn't care about money or success. God cares. What was your heart focused on every moment of every day? Were you focused on me, or were you focused on the world crashing around you? Were you focused on love, or were you focused on somebody over there who's full of hate? And you see every moment of decision when I decided to tune into God, when I decided to serve from my heart, and when I was serving from my ego and not being so in alignment, right? You see both. And then when you see the alignment, God, in the afterlife, you are just showered with this divine love and just this ecstatic bliss. And interestingly enough, that's not what I remember the most. All the times that I did something good and God shared gratitude with me, I remember it, but it's not as specific. However, the one thing I do remember is when I was mean to somebody on purpose in kindergarten.
Wow.
And I was mean, and she was, we were in kindergarten, and there was this is a funny story, but it hit, and it hits me every day of my life. I feel the regret of what I did to this little girl. And it's very simple because it was very innocent. So that's the thing, right? God didn't miss it. Just because I was like 4 or 5 years old doesn't mean I was being innocent. I was being a jerk. So what I did was there were some dog paw prints in the cement, and she laughed at them and thought it was really funny. And I looked at her and I said, how could you laugh at that? That dog is dead. And the people inside, my neighbors, are so sad that their dog died. And what if when you die, everybody just laughs? And she started crying.
Oh, wow.
Two things. One, I have no idea if that dog was dead. I was being mean. I was just playing. I was playing with that little dark, inside of me. I could feel when she was getting really upset and she started to cry, and then I stopped. Now, I stopped not because she was crying. I stopped because I didn't want to get in trouble. God didn't care that I was in kindergarten. God didn't care. It wasn't a mistake, you see. I skipped some of the stuff in high school that I did that was an honest mistake, right? Or the things that we do that because we're just kind of having a teenage moment. I don't remember any of that. Because it was just like, oh, well, whatever. Mariko's learning and growing. She made a mistake. No, this moment was not a mistake. I was enjoying that powerful feeling. And what I saw in my afterlife was I got to experience that moment from her point of view as if I was her. Like I could feel her emotions. I could see me through her eyes. So it was almost like I'm standing in her body being her. At the same time, I'm experiencing the moment as me. And so I'm experiencing her hurt, going, why is she doing this? Why is she saying this? I don't understand. I thought we were friends, right? All the things going through her mind and the pain in her heart. And then I experienced it from my point of view of just really, I don't know how to explain it, but almost like experimenting with that power, right? Anger is power. Hate is power.
Yep.
Then, this is where you never forget and you'll never do it again. Then you experience the entire situation from God's point of view. And all of that's happening at the same time. And that's the biggest thing I came back with was that moment. And so we worry about who's getting justice and who's not. Well, that story, most people would think you can overlook it. It's not a big deal. And yet that's one of the biggest painful moments of my life was when I hurt somebody on purpose. It was not an accident, and God saw all of it. And so again, we worry or we get upset. It's infuriating what's happening right now, and yet, because it's so ignorant, right?
Right.
And yet, God is not missing a moment. So when I see these people acting out of alignment with their soul, all I could say is you are digging yourself deeper. And saying, oh, Lord, forgive me at the end of your life is not going to be enough for a lifetime of hate.
Right.
God will teach you. God will show you. And it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be fun. And you're going to, and those people, those souls are going to wish that they had behaved better, but it will be too late. And so it is, Kimberly, a matter of saying, okay, but that's not where we're aligned with. We are creating a higher realm. We are creating, a higher conscious worldview. But we're not in that place right now, but we have to continue to do our work, right? And so all of those people saying, what is my purpose? The big thing, align with God, align with your soul. Watch it unfold, surrender, and watch everything unfold from there. Yep. Right? Remember who you are as the soul, as a child of God. When you're faced with somebody who's full of hate, who are you in that moment?
Right.
Who are you going to join them?
Right.
Or not?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Right. I think some people, they're just so deep in it, they almost need to be prayed for.
No, they're not
so
almost. They do need it. Yes, exactly.
I think the almost is like, I can be a little, I'm a Scorpio. I can be a little bit vindictive. I'm like, do I have to pray for you?
I know, it's like, yeah. But then that's the first thing I'm thinking. You need Jesus. You need prayer. That's what I'm thinking, because somebody needs to pray for you, because I can't stand
You're
it
nicer
right
than
now.
me. Okay, yeah. See, that's my point. Sometimes it's like, oh, good Lord, what are you doing? You think honestly, like, what is going on? But it's about saying, okay, I'm going to continue to stay aligned with my soul during 2020, because the blessings will continue to come unceasingly. Mm-hmm. But don't get wrapped up in the hate. Don't get wrapped up in the conspiracy. Because when you leave this world, none of it's real. And what I mean by that is, when I left this world, I realized very instantly, I'm not Mariko. I'm not a woman. I'm not a rock climber. I am not this childhood. My story is not me. I am the infinite soul. Mm-hmm. I am the infinite soul, period. No more. That's it. I am love, but I'm not all these things, these labels we put on ourselves, right?
Thank you.
Mixed race, right? Black, white, whatever, gay, straight, rich, poor. You're none of those things. Mm-hmm. What you take with you is your thoughts, deeds, and actions.
Wow. Repeat that again so people understand what you just said. That's what's most important. Say that again.
Yeah. What you take with you is your thoughts, deeds, and actions. What you take with you is the spiritual progress you made. Again, going back to emotional and spiritual maturity. That's what you take with you. You can't take anything else with you. You're not taking your wealth. You're not taking your,
That's right.
color of your skin or your sexual, nothing material, nothing psychological, nothing, even our bodies, right? I mean, I guess some of these people think they're taking their skin with them, so good luck. But you sorry.
But it's because
I forget we're live. We're having too much fun.
Well, when you're saying all this stuff, it just makes you reflect, and people need to understand that this is what it is. When we leave this world, none of this is going with us. And we fight so hard every day to live up to the so-called standards that are given to us every single day. You got to look this way. Your hair has to be this color. You have to walk this way. You got to wear these clothes. Everything, like you said, is labeled. It's conformed. It's put into us. And from the time we are brought into this world, that you have to be a certain way. So, people will spend their whole life trying to, I'm going to save this amount of money because when I retire, I'm going to do this. You don't even know if you're going to retire. We don't know what tomorrow's going to look like. But at the same time, this is how we're raised. And I always think about this commercial I remember seeing when I was a kid, when they used to, I don't know, I'm sure you've heard the term golden years, right? And you used to see these old people. It's, you had to wait till I'm 70 years old to have a decent life. I'm like, wait a minute, this can't be real,
Oh my goodness, no.
It hit me like a rock as a kid. I'm like, I got to be that old, and then by the time I'm 70, I don't really give a crap because I'm not gonna be able to move anyway. So it's like, I'm thinking, is that the life that we want?
Those commercials, everyone, it's not true. It's not true. But I think that you made really the biggest point about everything going on right now is people just want to be treated with dignity. Mm-hmm. They want to be treated as human. They want to be treated well. And I think that's at the core of our problems, is people are lacking empathy and compassion on a big scale. And they're so wrapped up in judgment, either hatred or wanting to get justice. And it's like, okay, but when you leave this world and this whole story of your life goes away, because that's really what happens, the story of your life goes away, and you are left being the infinite soul standing before God, who were you? Mm-hmm. That's it. And so I think it is up to each one of us to make that choice every moment and treat each other with empathy, compassion, dignity. Even if you don't, agree with people. There's people I don't agree with them. It doesn't mean I have to hate them. I'm not going to have that conversation because I'm not here to change their belief system. And I'm going to stay in alignment and integrity with my soul. It's not worth getting wrapped up in some hateful, heated conversation with someone who I am not here to change. My purpose is not to help them heal, grow, and change, right? If somebody's just filled with hate, that's not necessarily my purpose. Maybe it's somebody else's, but it's not mine. So being aligned with what am I here to do? Here's somebody spewing hate. Okay, well, bye-bye. I'm going to go along and continue walking my path.
Right.
And that there has to be a little more of that, of walking away from these, saying, okay, there's a whole chaotic, angry thing going on here. I don't have to participate.
Right.
You participate in other ways right now. We participate by voting. We participate by showing up.
Right.
And that does a lot more than doing these mean passive-aggressive posts on social media.
Exactly. Well, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as I call it, that's being cowardice anyway. So, you think if you can just put it out there on the social media, like nobody's going to say anything or care. No, we know who you are. We knew that's who you were before you put it out there anyway. Yeah. So, but anyway, I'm not going to get on that pool. Get off of my little
No, but it's true. I mean, every thought, word, and deed, God is,
right.
No, but God is watching that too. I'm very careful what I post because I don't want to post angry things. I don't want to post, I'm like, look, if every moment of every breath is a reflection of my love for God, then let me share that.
Amen. All right.
And I'm not going to share anything else.
We've definitely gone so far into this. I'm like, okay, I got one more question, one or two more, and then we're going to wrap this up because we are way beyond. And everybody's probably like,
way over. I know. I'll try to answer quickly.
It's okay. It's okay. No, the one thing I always ask my guests though, because you are also in business, obviously. And so I always like to get your input and information you can share with the listeners about what advice do you give for someone who wants to start their own business?
Do it. So plan it, right? So plan it first. Do it. I work with a business coach who is an amazing person, Susie Carter. I love her. Find a good person who knows the ropes. So if you've never had a business before, having a dream and wanting to start a business and getting your license, whether it's an LLC or C Corp or whatever you're doing is barely even the start. There's so much of the behind the scenes that happens, right? So if we think of the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg is what everyone sees on social media. Mm-hmm. Everything else under that is building the back end systems for your business. And so really find somebody who knows how to do that and learn from them. But if you feel called to start a business, do it.
All right.
It could help, but don't do it alone. It help.
Yeah, because it's easier, and of course, I think a big thing is, like you said, finding the right person, that you can align yourself with, and their purpose is the right way, because there's so many crooked people out here in the world, which we already know, but we won't go down that path right now. Again, we're going to keep it on the high level right now. So the other thing that I have for you, Mariko, is to please tell everybody how they can get a hold of you and reach out to you and follow you and all. And if you have anything you want to share about anything you got coming up, please let us know.
Oh, thank you. I have a free guide that I really love. It's on my website, soulpriority.com, and that's obviously spelled SOUL, if you've been listening to this conversation. So soulpriority.com. And it's just my free guide of the 5 mistakes I see people making over and over and over and over and over on how to find their purpose. And there's hopefully some ahas in there. That I would love for you guys to download and just kind of take a peek at and see if it sparks something for you. And so you can definitely find me on my website. But I'm on Instagram at Mariko Frederick and on Facebook at the Mariko Frederick. And so I would love to connect all there. All
right. Well, I want to say thank you so much, Mariko, for coming on. You have been phenomenal. I know that I made this an hour show tonight, and it was not my purpose, but there was reasoning for everything. Things happen for a reason. So I just, again, want to say thank you so much. You have been amazing. And for those listeners, you've been on here for us the whole hour, I hope you have learned something this evening about yourself, not so much about just what you've learned from us. It's truly about looking inside yourself. And if you feel you need to have that extra help to teach you and to understand what your purpose is and learning how to align yourself, please reach out to Mariko. She is phenomenal. I've definitely truly enjoyed this evening with you. Again, I thank you for coming on board. For everyone else, I'm here every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. We are on iHeartRadio and Spotify, plus 12 other new platforms. And please download our new mobile app. You can get that on Google Play. And we'd love to have donations to help out the continuation of our amazing show here in this platform. But also 20% of that goes directly to our Purple and Pink throwback fundraising event that we have for breast cancer awareness and domestic violence awareness through the month of October. And if you want to learn more about that event, please go to my website at www.sbilc.com. Otherwise, you can follow us also on our other platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, you name it, we're out there. But again, I thank you all for listening to me tonight, and we'll be back again next week, same time, same place. Have a good evening.
Good night, everyone. We will be back next Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Follow us on Spreaker, www.spreaker.com/user/WSBI. View our new WSBI website anytime at www.wsbillc.com and on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram.